Are you looking for an experience that will grow your teenagers' faith, increase their leadership skills, and teach them the discernment to engage with the world all around them, all while taking them on the adventure of a lifetime? I mean, who isn't looking for that? If your teenager loves fun, adventure, and wants to grow in their faith and leadership this summer, then send them to Excel's Summer Leadership Camp. Excel's Summer Leadership Camp is a 12-day experience for passionate young leaders looking to discover God's truth, to discern wisely, and live wholeheartedly. Your teenager will embark on a transformative journey in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where they'll build lasting friendships in the context of community, embark on thrilling adventures like camping, rock climbing, whitewater rafting, and they will receive expert training and certifications in categories like CPR and wilderness first aid. Each aspect of the camp is woven together to help them learn to discover truth, to discern wisely, and take godly action in the context of real-life situations. To learn more or begin an application, go to theexcelcamp.org. That's theexcelcamp.org. Hurry, because summer is just around the corner.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reclamation Podcast, where our goal is to help you reclaim good practices for faith and life. My name is Tony Meltenberg, and I get to serve as the host of this podcast. And this is episode 90. Hard to believe it. We're almost at 100. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to celebrating 100 episodes with you in just a couple of weeks. Until then, though, I'm excited to introduce you to a name you've probably already heard, Ben Higgins. Ben Higgins is the CEO of Generous Coffee. He is an entrepreneur, a nonprofit leader, and more famously, he's formerly the Bachelor. That's right. Season 20 of The Bachelor, I believe Ben Higgins was the Bachelor, and he did such a great job of living out his faith and what that means. He's got a brand new resource coming out, Alone in Plain Sight, where he talks about what it means to be seen and to be known. I loved the way he talked about intentionality in relationships and how you're serving God and what does that mean and look like. And I just loved his heart in our conversation, and I think you will too. As always, the best compliment you can give us is to share this episode with a friend, leave a rating or review on iTunes. It really does make a difference in helping people find us as they search for ways to grow in faith and life. Now, without any further ado, here's episode 90 with Ben Higgins. Ben, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate your generosity and your time.
Man, I'm pumped to be here. It's good to take a break away from the daily grind and just chat with you and whatever comes up today. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, so you grew up in Indiana and you're an IU guy, right?
Big IU guy. Massive IU fan.
I've got family in Lafayette, Indiana.
Okay.
And so they're really rooted in Purdue. So is that rivalry as real for Indiana fans as it is for Purdue fans? Because I have a hard time saying IU without putting the word sucks behind it because of all their chants.
Oh, it's very real, especially when it comes to basketball. It is just so real all the time. Now, my parents and most of my family, actually, I'm going to make the statement. I think it's true. I think I was the very first on either side of my family to go to IU.
Okay.
My parents went to Purdue. They met at Purdue. They love Purdue.
Yeah.
And I'm an only child. And so I remember my decision-making process was like, I'm not going to do what my parents did because I'm an only child and I'm going to show that I'm my own person. And that's why I went to IU. I didn't have any clue what I was doing. I love IU though. I'm glad I did. It's a great place. But it is tangible in Indiana.
Yeah, so I went to Indiana Wesleyan, and I did. I did online and did my undergrad there before going on to seminary. So Indiana has a special place in my heart.
That's actually two of our employees at Generous went to Indiana Wesleyan as well, and my aunt works there. My cousin goes there. So I know Indiana Wesleyan well. In fact, these two employees are incredible, and so Indiana Wesleyan must be doing something right.
I was really impressed with the whole process, especially I went to a couple of their extension campuses in the Dayton area. We live in Dayton.
Okay.
And, it was a great education for me, and I was super appreciative of it. And everybody was really good throughout that whole process. So I'm sure you got some good employees if they're alum.
I do. They're the best.
Now you grew up in Indiana, and I'm kind of curious. Your new book, Alone in Plain Sight, is a book that is laced in faith. But one of the questions I had is, what was your faith like growing up? Give me the foundation that was built upon your faith life as a young man and heading into college.
Oh man, yeah. So if I look back on a lot of it, it's funny. I talked to my fiance about this the other day. We were just having fun conversations about kids and how we'd raise our kids and things we do and not do. And I was like, you know what, and then people are gonna freak out at me. I know they are. But one thing that I'm gonna really have to walk a thin line on is the Santa Claus deal.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a house that was so loving, so caring, in a community that was loving and caring and very Christian. Warsaw, Indiana, Winona Lake, I guess Indiana was a Methodist capital of the world for years. I mean, it's about as Christian as you can get.
Yeah.
And I grew up with a lot of comfort about, like, it never was a question to me if Jesus existed or not, right? I never even had to really wrestle with it or process it, because it's like, everybody believes this. If everybody believes it in my world, then of course it's true. Well, everybody also believed in Santa Claus until a moment we were told Santa Claus doesn't exist, and it rocks your world as a kid. And I kind of had that same experience of getting my world rocked in college, which most people do. It's not a shocking time to have your life expanded and see other religions and other belief systems and people that didn't believe anything and had really good reasons why they didn't believe anything. And so at that moment in time, I really had to start wrestling with things, thinking through things, processing things. I would explain my faith as a child, which luckily my parents, I think, put in a lot of work in their life, raised me in a home that celebrated, that imitated, and that was involved with Jesus. And so I think they did a lot of work with that. So I wasn't led completely astray when I got to college. I had a lot of good foundations built.
Sure.
But I think, and I say this word and I don't mean it well. I think my faith as a child moving through high school was my faith in Jesus was a comfort. It was just comfortable. It didn't have any questions. It didn't have anything I need to lean to. There was no big decisions I had to make. Of course it exists, and there's a God that loves us, and there's a God that cares about us. And cool enough that one day when I die, I'll go to heaven and everybody will be happy and celebrate. Well, it was very simple too. So the comfort led to a level of simplicity with my faith. And as I've gotten older, simplicity in my faith still exists, but the comfort of it maybe has left me. More for the mystery and the awe and the wonder of who God is and what God is doing and where God wants me. But that didn't come easy. It's not been easy since I had to kind of release just the message that I grew up understanding.
Well, it's interesting when you said that. I got the image of like comfort food, right? Comfort food tastes good, but it's not always healthy for you. Yeah,
it's true. It's a good point. It wasn't healthy for me. It was simple. It was closed-minded, and it didn't help me at any, like, when I got to college, my faith just continued to get. I mean, I just like punched and fought against and kicked around, and I was left going, I don't know what I believe anymore. Because yes, you are destroying everything I've ever thought was true. And I need to find out what is true. And so I talked to my pastor yesterday about this, and I told him the statement. I said, I remember at one point, it might have been after college, I said, here's the thing. I want to follow truth wherever it is.
Yeah.
The reason I believe in Jesus is because I believe it is true. It's not an idea, it's not a concept. It's not some really cool, view that helps us all function in according to, culture and what our society wants. I had to find truth, and I'm still constantly looking for truth in all things. But the more and more I look for truth, and the more I started asking the hard questions, and the more I started to get on my hands and knees and actually cry out, God, if you're there, if you're there at all right now, the more and more Jesus showed up. And so I have to continue to lean on Jesus being true because of my personal experience. I don't know if I could convince you of it. I don't know if I could convince somebody of Jesus, but because of my experience and my search for truth, Jesus was always there, and Jesus always proved true. And but it was a lot of breaking down before I could start building anything back up.
Well, one of the things I appreciate is towards the end of the book, I mean, you get really in depth on how to lean into that discomfort of doubts. And you tell a story about Matt, and there's a phrase in there where you say, heed the call, right? For Matt to heed the call. And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about you, and I was wondering, how would you articulate your call today? I mean, obviously you've got a public persona, you're the CEO of a for purpose kind of company in Generous, and you're doing lots of different things. You're getting married. Like your life is changing, bro. Like, how do you describe your call?
Yeah. And I said a little bit ago, I said, the simplicity hasn't left. And I mean it by answering this question is, my call has proven over and over again to love others and love God. And that's been it. That is my calling, is to love others and love God. Now we can talk about purpose and where I think we find our purpose. But when it comes to what I'm called to do, it's to love others and love God. Love my enemy well, love my neighbor well, love those around me well. I think also within that umbrella of love is to look for those who feel like outsiders, which is where this book comes from. To those who need support, need help, just like I do. Like I would hope that my neighbors would love me as well, because I need help and I need support and I feel like an outsider. I think Jesus speaks about this and shows it and represents this. And I think when we would, if we had a utopian society where we could all love each other well and love God well, this thing would work. Like we would be in a rhythm, in a movement. We could all be experiencing our own skills and our own talents and our own purposes, and supporting each other in that, and lifting each other up in that, and leaning into each other when we need it. But we're humans. That's not going to be the case. But it's something that I can strive for, or I can focus on, and I can take responsibility in my own life to love others and love God.
How has your new relationship and getting engaged and this process of marital prep, what has that kind of shown you about love? Like, because love is such a big word in our culture.
Yeah.
And so, obviously you got a lot of things going on. What have you learned about love in this process of getting engaged? And you guys just bought a house recently there in Denver too, right?
Yeah, we just bought a house. 2 mortgages is fun.
Especially in the Denver real estate market. Yeah. I don't get it. No, thank you.
It's not fun. What it's taught me. Well, when I first met my fiance now, Jessica, I've obviously had a relationship off of The Bachelor that was very serious. And I learned a lot from that, about myself really, and about what I was looking for in a partner. The one thing that, when I went into a relationship with Jessica, I think my outlook on what I was looking for was a lot different than it was maybe a couple of years previous. I wanted somebody that was empathetic. I wanted somebody that could lean in to the difficult things in life. I wanted somebody that I knew I could have the tough conversations with about what I was struggling with, and that there would be an understanding and a grace and a compassion for those moments. And I want to do the same for her. But in order to do that, I had to find somebody who showed empathy, not only to me, but to her family, to her friends, to strangers. And I did that with her. I think what it's taught me so far in the pursuit of like getting further and further along in our relationship and building up to a wedding that we were supposed to have last year and now we're going to have this year, and hopefully, is there is, and this isn't going to fill the spot, but it's the understanding that we both have for each other in our own lives, that we're trying, that we're attempting to do this whole thing well. And we're not always going to do it well, but we can do it as a team. And so I'm just learning a lot of I was single for years. I've lived in this house that I'm sitting in now for 8 years alone. Like I haven't had to have anybody else invade my space in a long time. And so a lot of what I'm learning is just how to give up the space to be loved and to love her.
I think it might be Tim Keller who talks about the idea of marriage as being this sanctifying act, that it's designed to really just rip away more of some of your stuff so that you can get closer to God through the act of marriage. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, I have. I think Tim Keller is also the one that says that like his wife has been in a relationship with 5 different men since he married her. Like that, he consistently changes. That the relationship consistently changes. That she changes. That you mature, you learn, you process, you go through difficult situations. Excuse me, that builds character and resolve inside of your relationship. I've seen all of that. We've been together for over 2.5 years now. I've seen the ripping away, the things that I needed to rip away. I've seen somebody that cares about me and that I care about them, and there's a responsibility to that. When you invite somebody into your life to be loved and for you to love them, there's a responsibility for how you cultivate that relationship and the things that you do and don't do and the ways that your mindset has to change and the freedoms that you don't necessarily have to give up, but the way your freedoms kind of shift. It's also been really cool to have somebody for me, I think one of the cool things is have somebody that knows me so well.
Yeah.
And continues to know me so well. I think that's been really fun for me, is to have somebody that's so invested into who I am and where I'm going and what we're doing together. It's kept me accountable. And as an only child and dude who was single, like I said, for years and lived alone for years, I need accountability. I need somebody to stand beside me and say like, hey, you're doing great, or hey, you could do better.
I was on your Instagram the other day. It was probably yesterday, actually. And I noticed that you guys had sat down to start to watch the new season of The Bachelor.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've done podcasting now for 2 years, and my staff has never been more excited for an interview than they are with me and you. So Kristen and Nicole were just like beyond. They asked if they could come sit in the room, and I was like, "You can." That is so weird. You cannot. But I guess I didn't realize how much fervor there was for that show. I mean, the fans are super passionate, and so I saw you guys with their rooting on Matt James, who seems like a great guy. I don't know if you know him or not, but like,
yeah, I do. He's a good dude.
Seems like a great guy. When you watch something like that, does it give you PTSD? I was in the Army for a long time, and sometimes when I watch a certain clips or certain spaces, it kind of like, makes me sweat a little bit, breathe heavy. Does that happen for you when you sit down to watch that show?
Well, it's funny that the show, by the way, has a huge following. When you start doing the show, you have no clue of the following until you get off of the show, and you're like, people will now tell you, I watch this, other people that you never expected are like, I love that show. I was like, I never expected this, but people watch it, tens of millions of people watch it, and they watch it with complete investment. And so, yes, I've learned that. It probably used to. I forget a lot of the show now. It's been 5 years. It was a great season of life for me. It did, it was really good to me personally. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about what I needed to work on. It allowed me the space to do things like this. Like today, I get to talk to you. I don't think that happens, or the odds are a lot less. If I wasn't on the show, I wouldn't be able to write a book and have a platform to promote this book and talk about this book. But it's weird. Over the last maybe 2 years, and the thing I've been working on the most is one of the common feelings I get now is I forget it, and then it's like an envy at the people that are on it now. Not only a good envy and a bad envy. Like I would never go back and do that again. I would never want to go back and do that again. I'm very happy and very much in love, and I have a great thing going. But that was an exciting time in life.
Sure.
I went from being a software salesman and a good job. I don't hate that job, but I didn't love it. And within a couple months being the Bachelor, And for the first time in my life, like people started to care about what I said and what I did and who I was dating. It was an exciting time for me.
Yeah.
And I just talked to Matt about this actually. And the fame piece of this gets really exciting. It's fun for a bit. But I've learned now that fame has never been fulfilling. It's never been a pursuit that has ever left me feeling anything but wanting more. And so there's been a ripping away over the last 2 years of, and maybe this is the PTSD, is the ripping away of what am I going to be about? What is my legacy about? Who am I? Because the pursuit of staying more relevant or to staying engaged in the fame process. Now, fame may come, and that's not a bad thing. But what are you going to do with that fame? It's been a really fun switch for me to say, okay, this isn't about me, never been about me. When I made it about me, it never worked out well. And there's memories of when I started to make it about me that I have PTSD from. It was some really just like really lonely time in my life.
Yeah, one of my beliefs is that prolonged stress in our lives turns the cracks in our lives into canyons. So if you have any crack in your persona, like if there's a bad coping mechanism, if there's stress, and I've seen this on deployment, and I would imagine it has to be the same way in something like The Bachelor, right? Where they're going to record you over an extended period of time. It adds a certain level of stress.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting for the Army is that the number one purchase by most soldiers when they return from deployment is a motorcycle because they can't get the adrenaline rush anywhere else. Right. And so they're trying to get the adrenaline rush, right? It's a crack in their life that is now turned into a canyon. If you think about the people that you know from that world, do you think that that's an accurate representation? Like it kind of blows up the best and worst parts of who you are?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was sitting with a guy right here at this table who was on the show after me. He's a good guy, and he ran the fame race as hard as he could. He soaked it all in and tried to soak it in from 100 different angles. And he sat here, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, and he was in tears. He's like, "I've lost myself. I don't know who I am anymore. I've chased after this thing that I thought I wanted, that I thought I needed, and I've lost myself in the process. And I've lived, at that point, it was 3 years of my life chasing after everything and understanding nothing." And I think that's what I see often with the show. It's my only warning to bachelors. I don't have a lot of advice to give. Matt James is going to do a great job. He's going to be a good guy. He was chosen for a reason. The guys before him, the same thing. But my only advice these days that I've at least it's been true to this point is never let your head get too big. Never let it get too small. Stay in it for who you are. In fact, Chris Harrison, the host of the show, told me, I share this a lot, but he shared some advice with me after I got off The Bachelorette, before I was announced as The Bachelor. And it was right afterwards. And he's like, "Hey, I think you're going to be The Bachelor. And what are you going to do with it?" And I was like, "I don't really know, man. I don't know how to answer that. This wasn't a part of my 5-year plan."
Right.
And he said, "Here's the advice I would give you is use this to enhance the life you've already have, not change your life completely." And so I've taken that advice in, because what I had before was a relationship with Jesus. That moment in time, I realized that this thing could never be about me. And so, yeah, whenever I did start to make about me, those cracks did start to get bigger, or they're a lot more noticeable. I started to lose myself and chase after things, or want things and desire things that were not helping me or anybody else around me. It wasn't loving myself. It wasn't loving others. It wasn't loving God. It was just trying to fill a void. And when I started to make it about something greater than me, it all actually started to become a lot of fun. It all started to make a lot of sense. It all actually started to get a lot less stressful, because I was never the focus. And I just get to be involved in some really cool stories when we start making about something greater than ourselves.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
You tell some of those stories in the book.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones is two of my favorite ones, probably the big ones, Abby and Avery. So you mentioned Annie. I'm sorry. Yep. Annie and Avery. First of all, how's Avery doing? Because he had COVID in the book.
Had COVID 3 times, man.
Holy smokes.
And he is healthy now. I think he's COVID free as of maybe last week. I haven't seen the dude in a long time because he's been on I mean, when he gets on lockdown, like it's lockdown.
Well, he was on lockdown. I mean, you describe him kind of as like a bubble boy almost, like yeah. And so I can't imagine how sensitive he has to be to that. Super
sensitive. I mean, here's a story of Avery, and you'll read about it in the book. But I met Avery when I did a visit at the Children's Hospital back in the day, and met a lot of people that day. But he had his room was like completely isolated. It was locked off. It was quarantined. I think I maybe even used that word in the book. Like it was quarantined before quarantine was a thing. He was the bubble boy. Like for a year of his life, he had no human connection. He had to come in hazmat suits, and he didn't function with any like viruses coming into his system because he is so sick, and he still is sick. His immune system is completely compromised at every level. And so, I won't give the story away, but the cool thing I see and learn from that experience is what is it like to be disconnected completely, like physically disconnected, forced to be disconnected. I've learned a lot from that dude. A lot of wisdom exists in his life because of that experience. But he's good now. He's a tool, man. He's the best. I think he's back to work. He's brewing beer down at there's a brewery here in town called Brewability. It's for people who have any mental handicaps or physical handicaps. They hire him on, and that's who runs this whole thing. It's a beautiful thing to walk into.
Oh, that's awesome.
If you're ever in Denver, it's the coolest thing to stop by and see. But yeah, he's down there, man. I think he's managing it now, which is great. But yeah, his story then, as you mentioned, Annie's story is one, again, that comes, this is a cool story, but it comes from the show is, friends of Annie reached out to me and said, "Hey, our friend Annie is passing away. She was supposed to get her 3rd lung transplant, and unfortunately, she's been declined for it. And so she doesn't have long left. And we're doing a video of a bunch of her favorite celebrities, kind of just saying hi to her." And so I did my video and saw the video. Then when it came back to me, they sent it to me, and I was like, this doesn't feel like enough. Like just sending a video doesn't feel like it there's got to be more here. And so I reached out to her friends and said, "Can I talk to Annie?" Mostly selfishly, I just wanted to talk to Annie and learn from her. And that chapter goes into our conversation of what it's like to know you're dying, and what it's like to be facing death, not in a time that's kind of mysterious to us when none of us know when we're going to die, but like knowing it's coming up, like knowing there's almost a date that you could put and say, this is it. I don't know if the chapter does it justice, but the weight, the heaviness, the joy, the peace in those conversations for me are sacred. It's probably the best way to say it. Like they go a lot farther than anything I can ever explain, probably through words. But talking with her in her last couple of weeks, I think the whole book could have just been that. Like if I could have gotten that section out, it would have been worth it because she was special.
Yeah, it's obvious to me that in some of these moments you have really given all of yourself. And that's where I see you using your platform to glorify God in such a powerful way. I'm curious, how do you discern when is the right time? Because obviously you're limited, right? And so one of the questions I always love to ask people is, how do you hear from God? And then how do you know when to act? Like, what's your process of, because I would imagine that a guy in your position gets requests, frequently.
Yeah. Oh, man. I was on, I don't know if you know Bob Goff, but I was on his podcast last year, and he didn't tell me the topic. I don't know, it's his thing. And we started the thing, and he goes, "We're going to talk about time management and depleting resources." And so he asked me the same question, and I had to look at him and say, "I don't know how to answer you." And I'm almost going to say the same thing to you, but I've learned a little bit since that question has been going on in my head for the last year since he asked me it. I think this is like not anything too spectacular. One thing I've done is I've brought in other people to help filter and bring resource to me and help kind of go through those things. The other thing that we say at Generous, because Generous gets a lot of these requests, and this is maybe the best way to say it, is we look to invest into nonprofits or social causes that are effective in their mission. So they've proven their effectiveness. They're sustainable, so they have a long-term outlook on, if you're bringing people out of sex trafficking, not only are you helping recover them and get them to safety, but you're also helping rehab with mental health. You're helping to get them to a place of sustainability. Effective, sustainable, and efficient. They have to be efficient in their funding and what they do. Now, I like to say the same thing for my life. I want to invest in the things that are people focused. I love animals, but I think I'm called to be working with people in the resources that I do have and the time that I do have. I look for things and people that want to get better. And if they don't want to get better, I want to know why they don't want to get better. But I can't help somebody who doesn't want to get better.
Right.
That are sustainable, that are effective, and they're efficient. But it gets really hard. I don't have a great answer to that. It's something that I'm still struggling with because you get an email from a wonderful human who's saying, "Hey, I'm hurting and I need somebody to talk to," and you maybe get into those a day. Well, that's hard to keep up with.
Sure.
So it's a constant push and pull. And if somebody ever out there who is listening to this has a really good answer on how to do this, I would love to hear it. But it just hasn't gotten a rhythm for me yet.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those things where you just have to constantly live in the tension of every request.
Yeah.
And I don't envy the position for sure, but what you've done with it is beautiful. As a matter of fact, I saw the message that you did for Dressember. My family and I were big advocates for Dressember. My wife's done it for 7 years, and I had Blythe Hill on the podcast a while ago, and she's an amazing human doing amazing things. So, there's a lot of tension in those kind of things all the time.
Yeah, it is. And you're right. Maybe living in the tension. I would also say, like, in my younger years, right after the show, maybe, or even before the show, I was kind of always resentful to the request. Push it away or go one more thing, roll your eyes and be like, okay, I'll just get it and do it. I'm learning maybe it's because I have more time and maybe the requests are slowing down or it doesn't really feel like they are. Get excited about the idea that I'm still asked to be involved. I'm excited that I still get the opportunity to be a part of these things. These are incredible things, like you said, Dressember, and the things that I get to advocate and be a part of. I believe in them, and that's why I'm speaking upon them. And I don't necessarily want that to go away. I want to live in the tension. I feel fortunate to even have the ability to be in the tension. That's a very, very fortunate place to sit, is to even have the opportunity be involved. And I would like to then like kind of swing this to say, and then part of the book is I was at my cousin's theater program, and all these kids are so sad that the theater program was leaving because they were going to miss the group that they had around them. And this will tie into what I was saying is, it came to my mind at that time. I was like, well, why don't you go out and create this group outside of, Indiana or Marion, Indiana? Why don't you go out and create this group wherever you go in this world? Because you know how it feels to be loved and to love others and to show understanding and grace and empathy. Like, do that. And so I'm fortunate enough to sit in the tension of it, and because I get a platform to do it on. I think everybody has a platform.
Sure.
You have breath. Like, you're here. Yeah. You're like on this earth. Like, that's a big platform. That's not a lot of people get the opportunity to be on this earth and to have breath and to have value and purpose. And we all have that. Mine just happens to come with 1 million followers on Instagram, and that's great. But it doesn't like, I don't know if the data and the numbers change the impact. I think all of us have an incredible calling upon us, and that is to, again, love God and love others.
Well, and I think especially in as the season of COVID that we're in, that's such an important message. I've seen so many people are like rocked by the fact they can't go back to Sunday morning worship, and I'm like, man, worship is so much bigger than Sunday morning. It's everything that we get to do for God with our lives and making disciples and going out and living kind of our call, like you said. How do you stay rooted in your faith on a daily basis with all the things that you do? Any daily practices that you're like, man, my day like will not go well if I don't do X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I do. One of them is working out. I think that's a great practice.
Yeah, love it.
For my spiritual, emotional, mental health. I think it's understated oftentimes that is a incredible thing for me to be able to do. Another thing I'm very fortunate to be able to do, but it's a great practice for me. It kind of resets the day. I do it first thing in the morning. I work out.
You a CrossFit guy? What do you do?
It's called F45. It's like a CrossFit-ish gym. It's without heavy weight, and so I have terrible knees, man. I've bad high school injuries, and so
I read that in the book and I resonated. I tore my ACL and meniscus last year doing box jumps.
Okay, so you get it, and so like, I have to take it easy. Like I still can get the cardio. I got to take it easy. The other thing is I am a big fan of contemplation. In fact, last night, and I'm always healthier when I do. I'm feeling pretty good today because last night I was sitting here at this table and I do this weird thing. People think it's odd, but I love it. I turn off all the lights in my house and I play. Last night I was playing Josh Garrell's new album. Never heard it. It's really good. And he kind of covers. He has a beautiful voice, but he covers some worship songs, but also just some really good, like I would call them like truth songs, like life songs, like about anything. Like they don't necessarily have to be in the Christian realm. They're just speaking of things of the heart and of the soul and that we all experience. And so I turn that on. I turn all the lights off. I turn on a candle and I just sit. And I draw oftentimes. And I would show you the picture I drew last night, but that would be weird. But I do that often. It helps me refocus. The mystery of God is still something that's so intriguing to me. And when I'm constantly overwhelmed and inputted with communication, I don't think about these things. Like it's hard for me to like be in a place of peace and comfort and understanding. And so the times of silence are really big for me. I'm a huge advocate of silence, no matter who you are. I think the tension of silence, I think letting your mind in a sense go and through that, like almost pray through the silence is an incredible thing where all of a sudden life starts to not click. There's nuggets and there's things that you remember. And I do that often. And I think that helps me. It also, in this thought, I know I'm rambling, to end this thought in the silence, I have this notebook that sits in front of me and all of a sudden, like there's somebody in my life that comes up to my mind. I don't think about it. So I write them down and then I want to contact them for whatever reason. Maybe it's just to say hi, but it allows me the space to start to think about who have you neglected or who have you not spoken to, who needs to hear from you or who do you want to hear from? And so I use that time also to kind of get a strategy that sounds super diligent or whatever, discipline. But I get a strategy for where and who I want to communicate with. So that's my big practice. I'm a big fan of silence.
I love that. We often say here that if you're not dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions.
Yeah, I stay distracted a lot.
Me too. I'm all over the place. So I really find that dwelling with God, the way that you're talking about, is a perfect. I do mine in the morning, and one of the things I've been trying to do, even after my scripture time and my prayer time, is like sitting in silence.
Yeah,
and that's so hard for a guy that likes to talk.
tough, man, but it's good. It's healthy.
It is good. Do you and Jessica do anything together?
We pray a lot together. And we're getting a good balance here. I seem to be a critic a lot, so we'll leave maybe church on Sundays and I'll be like, that didn't fit with me. Like, I don't get it. Like, help me understand this. Like, the pastor said this, but yet the way I read this in scripture, or the way that I've seen God interact in this world doesn't fit with what was being said. And can we talk about it? And she does. Like, I love her because she sits in that. Like, there's also times where she's like, she's not a critic. Like, she celebrates and she loves hard and she loves well. And but I always enjoy when we can have those conversations. Or sometimes I notice I ramble for 45 minutes and she sits there and at the end she goes, I'm glad we could talk about it. But faith is the cornerstone of our relationship. In the most, I would say, real way, it's what we both thrown our eggs in. Like, our basket is full of Jesus eggs, and we're saying, hey, if you take Jesus away from me, you take everything. And so as a result, our relationship is built on that, and we have trust and faith that Jesus is going to work through us and with us. The cool part of that is Jessica has a heart or desires to involve herself in the lives of others who are hurting and needing as well. And so we do that together. Yeah. Is, I think, one of the coolest things we can do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a big fan of spouses who pray over each other as well. Like, so when I'm doing premarital counseling, I always challenge my couples that I think that if couples who can get into a regular habit of praying over each other, if you have to pray for your wife's head and her heart, and then she prays for your head and heart every day, I found it to be transformational in the marriage. And like, physically laying hands on them to pray is such a powerful act and a discipline, especially on days when you don't like them.
Yeah, that's a big deal, huh?
And I also usually tell the guys that it's a great way to say something without your wife interrupting you.
Yeah, you can, like, it's a moment of silence. It's been a really cool. This is a relationship, but I've had others that we share a common faith. But you asked earlier, one of the things I'm learning, it's just such it's made life not only more beautiful, but it's really good to have that partner sitting beside you, holding you accountable to the things like you're saying is, what does she need in our relationship? And also, what does she need to continue to pursue Jesus with everything she has? And I get to be a part of that now, like a deep part of that. And I haven't held that responsibility in anybody else's life ever, where I've been asked to be such a deep and connected piece through their journey that I believe is the most beautiful adventure we'll ever go on. And so, it's been fun. We try our best.
That's awesome, dude. I love it. So my listeners love to pray for people, and I'm curious what they can pray about in regards to this book. So, like, as this writing comes out, and there's some incredible messages in here that people need to hear. What's the prayer as this book gets launched out into the wilderness?
Definitely. Comes at a good time. And this probably isn't, this won't be the fluffy thing that I probably should say. But the publisher has a lot invested into this. My risk reward is, writing this book. Yeah. Putting myself out there to the best of my ability. The one thing I hope for in this is that at the end of it all, we can all celebrate. This was good. And so the prayer here is that this is good. Now, I used to say I would love to sell so many copies of this book. Well, what I realize is that isn't, again, fulfilling. What I really hope is that one person reads this and their life has changed for the better, or they feel less alone after reading this book. That's my hope. If I summarize it and say, I hope that one person at least can feel less alone after reading this book, and it would all be worth it, because I personally want to live with the belief that that is the value that one person has in this world, is that if one person is helped, then this has all been worth it. However, there is the side of this that says, hey, I hope we can all these people who have put in blood and sweat and tears into this book and who have risked themselves into it, myself included, and my team, and then the team at the publishing company. At the end of this, we can all look at each other and this was good. Like this was something that we can celebrate. I want to be able to celebrate this book. And not only because it's the very first thing in my life that I've ever done, that I've kind of created, written, marketed, promoted, but also because it is me. It represents me. It's my story. And, I want celebration. So people can be praying that this book is a place of celebration for all of those involved, including the readers who get to pick it up and read it. We can all celebrate it at some point.
I love that. So where's the best place for people to go to learn more about you or the book, or if you're doing any book tours or anything like that? I'm sure COVID makes everything weird. So where's the best place for people to start for more information?
Definitely. BenHigginsBook.com.
Okay.
The best place. I would say pre-orders are helpful. It helps kind of set the stage for the launch. It gets people, the big Barnes and Nobles and Amazons and all those Targets, all those places kind of interested in it. So pre-orders really help. And so if you're like, hey, this book sounds like something I would like. If you've ever felt alone, or if you've ever felt disconnected from yourself, from others, from romance, or from God, I believe this book could be a book that would be at least a benefit, or something you should pick up. If you've ever felt that way and you're interested in it, pre-ordering it right now would be super helpful. So BenHigginsBook.com is the place to go. Also, we'll have all the dates of the non-existent book tour because of COVID hasn't been planned yet. So yeah, that'd be the best.
That's awesome. Okay. Last question I always love to ask people. It's an advice question. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, except I like to make it a very specific moment.
Okay.
So from my understanding, you met Jessica by sliding into her DMs. It's
True.
Told on the internet. If you could go back, and I guess it's several years now, and give yourself one piece of advice as you begin to start this relationship with her, what's the piece of advice you would say?
I think the advice I would say is to start. Okay. Let me preface this, because it was a conversation I had with my best friend. When I met Jessica, I knew it was going to be special, and I was actually given the advice I would have given myself. This was probably 3 months after meeting her, and I called my best friend and said, "I'm struggling. I'm falling in love with this girl. She's incredible in every way." But being single has been exciting. I'm still known as the Bachelor. In fact, the Bachelor at that point was still calling me to say, "Hey, would you ever want to do the show again?" Like, that is exciting. It feels good to be there. And I said, I'm worried, man, that I'm about to enter into a relationship, but I don't know if the excitement is going to still be there years from now. And he was married. He is married. And he sat me down and he said, "Here's my advice to you. Yes, things might not be as, I forget, kind of erratic. Yes, life might not be as exhilarating, or the adrenaline of constant new thing might not be there. But entering into a relationship with somebody like Jessica, and entering into a committed relationship at all, can allow life to be so much more beautiful and fulfilling." It was a moment that I now see. I've experienced that. I'm in it, right? But I wish I would have given myself that when I first met her, because I think when I first met her, there was that wall of insecurity up going, "Hey, I think this thing's a real deal. I'm lucky to have you in my life, but I'm nervous about what this means." And I wish I could have given myself that advice back then to say, "No, this is going to make your life so much more beautiful. This is going to make your life so much more fulfilling. The possibilities in front of you are endless. And now you get to do it with a partner." I lived in too much in my own head for too long. But that would be the advice.
That's awesome. Ben, thank you so much for your generosity today with your time and for this writing and for what I think it's going to do for so many people. So I really appreciate the time today.
Hey, Tony, thank you, man. It's been awesome.
What a phenomenal conversation with Ben. I'm so thankful for his heart and his time today. He was so generous. And I love the way he talked about what it means to be seen and known by God and ways to connect in his meditation practice and just how important it is to be disciplined about our connections. I really hope that everyone hears that in his words today. Again, please share this episode with a friend, leave a rating or review on iTunes. Those are the best two ways that you can support the podcast. We're always trying to get the word out. Tag us on social media if you want. I'm at TWMilt. Follow Ben Higgins and be sure to pick up a copy of his book, Alone in Plain Sight. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing you next week, episode 91.